arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
Hello and welcome to the Bad Taste Crime Podcast. I'm Vicky.
And I'm Janelle.
Welcome back to another week of this. I don't even know anymore. We spend so much of our time fumbling around in the dark.
Yep, that tracks.
Then we come together on a Sunday to record. So that's
a bloody
the show.
Sunday, if you will.
I don't even know what to start the top with except for newsroom, I guess.
Yeah, we're struggling.
I'm very tired.
This morning.
Very tired, yeah. For a lot of good reasons, some stressful reasons, but it's all right. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about murder. Yeah. So with that, let's head over to the newsroom.
Fit to breathe, our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad.
So I totally missed, if this is your first time listening, special hello to you. Our news this week comes from Ontario.
Okay.
Where there was just
been there a few times.
A small misunderstanding. You've been there before? Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to go to Canada. I think it would be really fun.
I used to go every summer for like a very long time.
Really?
Yeah.
Honestly, that's not that uncommon where we're at because we're so close to Wisconsin and just like the border of Canada.
Yeah, Ontario is right above us.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would love to go someday. Just to go.
Just drive. Just go.
Yeah, just to go gawk at the Canadians. So from Ontario, police were called to a restaurant where there was an altercation happening. They said when they got there, there was an intoxicated man who was trying to chat up this lady at the bar. And during the conversation, he told this woman that he really liked the perfume that she was wearing. Okay. And then she told him she was carrying a gun, and he got wigged out and called the police.
That is one way to diffuse a "do you want to go out with me" situation.
I have a gun. Yeah, right.
Gun.
Straight up.
Fuck away from
I have a gun. So they went and talked to the woman who had an entirely different story because yes, he did ask he said, I really like the perfume that you're wearing. And she said, oh, the name of the perfume is Juliet Has a Gun. So he thought that,
she was saying something funny like,
yeah,
my name is Juliet and I have a gun.
Yeah, right. So this article, it comes from CP24. It says that Juliet Has a Gun is a brand that offers a variety of fragrances, including one that comes in a bullet-shaped container. Mm-hmm. So police did a Google search to find out if it was legitimate and found out it was. Like, oh, this is very clearly a misunderstanding. Yeah. But I just love that there is literally an article about this misunderstanding.
Yeah, it was probably really loud in the bar, and he probably didn't hear the first part. Just like, what?
Juliet has a gun. Have a gun? Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah. I just think that's so funny. Okay, moving right along to Netflix and Kill. This week, we are talking about Take Care of Maya.
I literally just watched that yesterday.
Good timing. As we record this, it has only been out for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. I got a tip from a coworker, actually, that this had come out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, no, I haven't heard about this yet, blah, 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 blah. And it was the next day that I watched it. So this is the story of a girl named Maya, who at a young age is diagnosed with a very rare chronic pain disorder. Mm-hmm. It is called, let me see if I can find it.
Bunch of letters.
CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome. So before she's diagnosed with this, she has to go to all these doctors, and it's because it's just not a very common thing. They find out that what works as a treatment is ketamine treatments, which is also for this disease a very common treatment. They eventually go down to Mexico, where she does like a 4 or 5 day ketamine coma,
which is freaky.
But also immensely helped her until she has a relapse like a year later in Florida in the middle of a hurricane. And they have to go to the emergency room rather than their regular doctor in order to get treatment. This is where things start to go a little sideways. Her mother, who is a nurse at this point, has taken extensive notes and records of everything that the doctors were telling her to do and knows exactly what her daughter's treatment needs to be. But when she got to the emergency room, was viewed as pushy, demanding, suspect. And the staff decided to launch an investigation into child abuse, potentially. There were suggestions of Munchausen's possibly. And what essentially ends up happening is the hospital takes medical custody of Maya from her parents, accusing them of child abuse. So this is a very interesting documentary. I'm not going to go any farther than that because there's some really sad shit. It's honestly, it's all sad, but I think you really need to watch it to kind of get the full impact, because this is kind of the opposite side, I think, of child protective services. Like when people are talking about it, because a lot of times we're talking about sort of the inefficiency, which I guess this is sort of inefficiency, right? But about being able to take children from their homes or like not doing enough to intervene in really bad situations.
Did you watch
right?
it at all?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Child Protective Services is privatized in Florida.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm saying is like normally that's the conversation we're having. This is kind of the opposite side where it's like
they're all too eager because it's private.
Yeah. So that is a big thing. There's specific staff that they point to. There was like a child abuse physician, or I forget what the actual title is, but it's like a physician specifically for this type of investigation that they pretty much rely on, that is employed by the privatized
it's
CPS services.
It's too incestuous for me.
And the woman who was doing the investigation into them was also problematic in a lot of ways. She had been accused of child abuse, I think.
Yeah, and she was like really overtly like touchy friendly with the kids, like in an almost inappropriate manner.
Yeah, they talk about forcing Maya to take these pictures, and it's a lot. But I thought it was really interesting, and frankly, not something that I was super aware was like happening. I did not realize.
It's Florida for you.
And frankly, it's a nationwide issue. But when they said it was Florida, I was like, oh, fucking course. My views on Florida are not positive as of late, if I'm being totally honest.
I mean, it's kind of becoming a very large dumpster fire down there.
Yes, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
It's not a political podcast. So I would definitely suggest watching it. I think it's definitely an interesting conversation.
Yeah, the one thing that struck me about it is the recordings that the mother would take. She did a lot of documentation where she would record her
which is good
interactions with like everybody.
Yeah, which is good. And a lot of it wasn't for like sneaky reasons necessarily. A lot of it was to record the medical care that her child was getting, which I think is brilliant. But then came in handy later when they needed to file a lawsuit. So... You know, it's a very, it was definitely hard to watch because also Maya, the daughter, has some very strong reactions and like deposition that she's giving later. And, you know, she's actually like interviewed later on in the documentary now that she's older. And it's a tough watch, but well worth it. And it's like an hour and a half long, I think, also. So if you got an hour and a half to spare, I would watch it. It's called Take Care of Maya. It's on Netflix now. Not an ad.
Streaming.
All right, this is that part of the show where we say content may not be appropriate for all listeners. This week, as we're in the midst of summer, I think.
Yes,
I can't honestly remember when this episode comes out, but currently
in our timeline.
it was 95 yesterday.
Yeah, it was gross.
It was nasty.
I had to tell my partner that we need to put the window unit in now.
Oh,
I was like,
no.
well, officially the window unit needs to go in.
Peace out, electric bill.
Yeah. Well, it's actually not that bad.
No. Oh my God. I got my first bill for like, and honestly, I don't even think this is the first bill that has like the full month of electric, because there are still some days at the beginning of May and even like mid-May that like I didn't have anything on because it was cool enough to just have the windows open. So next month is going to be really killer, but I already saw a big jump and I was like,
Yeah.
ugh.
My electric bill is always pretty reasonable. It never really goes above like $65. It's the gas bill that's
Yeah. My gas bill was like
fucking
$20. It
atrocious.
was sick.
Yeah.
But that's because I'm not using heat. God. Oh my God.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyway. So.
Old.
Yeah, I know.
Complain about old people
Let's
stuff.
talk about air conditioning and electric bills. So in light of summer, we got to talk about some beach safety,
Beach day.
but also beach day. But you got to be careful out there.
Yeah, especially if you're on Chicago beaches.
Yo, have you heard about the Australia beaches? Kind of related to this, actually. They have like hyena warning or dingo warnings because waves of dingoes are attacking people on beaches.
Yeah,
and they're
like that
straight up.
woman who got her baby taken by a dingo and no one believed
Yes,
her.
the dingo ate my baby.
It literally did.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, they had I saw a video, it was like a compilation on TikTok, I think, but it's literally like news clips from Australia right now of people like sunbathing on the fucking beaches and then being surprised when a dingo comes up and bites their ass and then they're like, ah, and they like run away. I'm
Yeah,
like, what
you
the
need
fuck?
like some dingo repellent or like put a tiny thing around you, like a little cage, like
Or just don't go to that
children.
beach.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Just
if
saying.
it's all the beaches, what are you gonna do?
I know. Anyway, so I am going to talk about the Wanda Beach murders, which also comes from Australia.
Very nice.
Yes, that was not an intentional segue, but here we are. So it starts with Marianne Schmidt. So Schmidt moved to Australia from West Germany with her family in 1958. She was joined by her parents, Helmut and Elizabeth. And
How unfortunate for her.
5 siblings, Helmut Jr., Hans, Peter, Peter, Trixie, and Wolfgang, which are, I mean, that just like all screams
Helmut.
German. Helmut and Helmut Jr.
Okay.
The year after moving to Australia in 1959, the Schmidts added a 7th child named Norbert.
Oh. How unfortunate for all of these children.
Yeah, I mean,
really
it's the
great
50s.
nicknames. Yeah.
So the Schmidts eventually ended up settling in Temora, which is near New South Wales, where they stayed for a few years. But the father, Helmut Schmidt, was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he moved the whole family to Sydney, where they were able to find a house in West Ryde. And a year later, unfortunately, Helmut would actually pass from the Hodgkin's lymphoma. So after moving to West Ryde, Marianne became really good friends with the next door neighbor, Christine Sherrick. Now, a little bit about Christine. She did grow up with her parents, but when she was younger, but unfortunately, her father passed in 1953, and her mother remarried after his death and was living with her current spouse in it was like a northwestern Sydney suburb. And it's reported that Christine chose to move in with her grandparents, although it's not entirely clear why. I don't know if there was like maybe something with the stepdad or just didn't, she wanted to stay.
I wish I could have lived with my grandparents.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So she was living with her grandparents, which were the neighbors of the Schmidts. And once she was there, it was just a short time before Marianne moved in next door. And the two became really fast friends. In January 1965, Elizabeth Schmidt was admitted to the hospital for an illness, leaving the oldest Schmidt children in charge of the household. On January 11th, Helmut Jr. and Hans decided to stay home and clean the house while Marianne and her neighbor Christine took the youngest children to Wanda Beach near Cronulla. This wasn't like a really uncommon thing. The beach was like a bus trip away, so they would leave early in the morning and go spend the day and
Going to Chicago.
yeah, exactly. And as kids, I mean, they were just going on their own. These girls were teenagers, so... Just the day before, the Schmidts and Christine had actually visited the beach. According to Hans's later recounting, quote, they went to the beach early in the morning, probably around 8 a.m. All I remember was Marianne saying, yeah, we're going, see you later. And that was the last time I spoke to her. What actually happened when they arrived at the beach is kind of a debate because there's not a ton of direct witnesses. But according to the Sydney Morning Herald, it sort of went like this. The group arrived at the beach, but discovered that it had been closed due to strong winds. So they decided to go behind some rocks.
Which, like, back then, how would you know? Right?
Yeah, a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to physically
you wouldn't be able to, like, look
shit.
online. Yeah. They literally showed up and they had a sign hung that closed the beach. So they decided to go behind some rocks at the south end of the beach and have a picnic because the rocks, like, blocked the wind. Christine separated from the group for a little while, but came back later. And then they decided to go to the sand dunes behind the Wanda Beach Surf Club around 1 p.m. By this point, they were kind of bummed out by not actually being able to enjoy the beach while they were there due to the weather conditions. And the younger Schmidt children were becoming restless and were just like, let's get the fuck out of here. Like, we want to go. Which I can't even, again, I'm like.
It's too many fucking kids.
Even now at 33, I'm like, that's too many fucking kids for me to deal with. So Marianne and Christine told the kids that they had left their bags sort of hidden away near the rocks where they were at earlier. So they told the kids that they were going to go get the bags and that they just to stay where they were at in the dunes and wait for them to come back. Peter Schmidt would later give evidence that Marianne and Christine had walked off in the wrong direction and that he had called out to the girls to tell them, but they ignored him and continued to walk off out of sight. The younger kids waited in the dunes until 5 p.m. when they decided to go get their bags themselves and then head home. Marianne and Christine were officially reported missing around 8:30 p.m. that evening. The following morning, on January 12th, a man named Peter Smith had been walking along Wanda Beach with his 3 nephews. Around 1.5 miles north of the Wanda Beach Surf Club, Smith noticed something strange in the sand and thought that it was a store mannequin.
Never a mannequin.
Never.
And a box always has body parts. Just know this.
Also garbage bags.
Yes.
Every garbage bag along the highway. So he thought it was a mannequin that had been buried because it was just the leg sticking out. But he like went up and brushed some of the sand off and was like, oh shit, this is a human leg. Which I think about and I'm like, that would really wake me out. Therapy for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So he called the police.
Good job.
Yeah, he called the police. At that time, Smith thought that he had only found one body. But when the authorities arrived and began investigating the scene, they discovered that there was not one, but 2 bodies, that of Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sherrick, both aged 15 at the time. Both girls had scratch marks on their faces, which indicated a struggle. And police also found an approximately 37-yard drag mark in the sand. And they sort of at this point in time were hypothesizing that Christine had actually tried to escape and made it some way. So they're saying Christine was trying to escape while Marianne was dying, essentially. But whoever was attacking them caught her and dragged her back to where Marianne was at. They did try to find other evidence at the scene, but they were unable to find a murder weapon. There was also this issue of the fact that they were on the beach. They sort of had to, make sure that things weren't going to get swept away by the tides. There's tourists coming around and trouncing through things. And so, I mean, it always poses a challenge.
The wind yesterday.
The wind, yeah. When Marianne and Christine's bodies were autopsied, it was determined that Christine had a skull fracture from a blow to the back of the head and had been stabbed 14 times.
Excessive. Okay.
Excessive, yeah. Marianne had been stabbed 6 times and her throat was deeply slashed. Both girls had their underwear cut and semen had been found on both bodies. During later interviews and inquiries, Peter Schmidt told authorities that he had witnessed 3 young people sitting on rocks nearby while they were eating lunch, but didn't see them again that afternoon. This is from the Canberra Times, quote, Helmut said his 8-year-old brother Wolfgang had told him later about a boy he had seen on the day the 2 girls were killed. He said he saw the blonde-haired boy aged about 15 or 16 with cream on his nose and a blue towel over his shoulder on the rocks on the Cronulla beach, walking with Marianne and later walking along the beach by himself, end quote. Of course, there is some doubt cast on this recounting of things because Wolfgang was very young at the time that this was happening. That's the thing is like the kids that were with them at the beach were really, really young. Not to say a young person's testimony doesn't matter, but memory is a funny thing. Kids are funny things. Like it's not all as black and white, I think, as you would hope.
Yeah.
And because of that, his story has shifted a bit over time also. So take it with a grain of salt, I would say. Officially, the girls were last seen around 12:45 p.m. by a local fireman, Dennis Dostine, who witnessed Marianne and Christine north of the surf club. He claimed when he saw the girls, they looked to be in a hurry and that one of them had glanced behind her as if she was being followed, but didn't see anybody else following them, which is suspect. I mean, it's just like, that's creepy.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been a teenager where it's like, this person is following me.
Yeah.
100% following me.
Yeah. Police began searching for any sort of lead with the little evidence that they were able to find. Although they had found a knife with some blood on it at the time. It was like the tip of a knife. They were not really they weren't really able to connect it directly to the crime. Add to that the other reported 6 knives found and handed into police from the public who were just like, we found this knife on the beach, which fair enough.
I'm sure you find lots of knives on the beach.
Oh my God, yeah. And dozens of other knives found just like around Sydney in general, in case like they didn't leave it at the beach, they ditched it later.
Yeah.
Again, from the Canberra Times, quote, a broken piece of a knife blade found near the murder scene soon after the bodies were found did not fit any of the knives handed into police, end quote. Police also said that they had interviewed around 7,000 people during their investigation, but didn't seem to get anything valuable. So this is going very cold very quickly. There were 3 suspects. I will say that there was kind of 1 main suspect and 2 that are very iffy connections. You know how this goes. When a case goes cold, there's a lot of theories.
Yeah, a lot of finger pointing. Local pervert.
Yeah. And like the connections are sometimes very loose where it's like one thing that's like, they were there on the same day. It's like,
They had sand in their shoes.
Yeah,
Guilty.
Right. So these are the three main suspects. The first has to do with this is sort of, I would say, probably the weirdest of the 3. First has to do with the former detective, Sec Johnson, who had received a painting in 1975 from murderer Alan Bassett. Okay. Do you know where I'm going with this?
I don't.
All right.
But I'm here for the ride.
Okay. Bassett was imprisoned for the attack, rape, strangulation, and bludgeoning death of 19-year-old Carolyn Orphan in 1966. The claim by Johnson was that the painting, which was called A Bloody Awful Thing, I tried to find a picture of it and could not find a picture of it, but it showed the body of a victim along with a broken knife and blood trails.
Okay.
Descriptions sort of call it an abstract landscape.
Okay.
Anyway, Johnson pretty much became convinced that Bassett was responsible for Marianne and Christine's murders because of this painting and like the similarities they had to the crime scene.
Okay.
Johnson was writing a book about this. He had become so convinced that he was going to release his book. Unfortunately, he dies before he can publish the book about the subject. But his theory gets repeated by crime reporter Bill Jenkins. Jenkins is then sued for defamation in 1994. But it sounds like the suit was dropped at some point. I'm not sure why. Bassett was released in 1995 and did submit DNA for testing in the Wanda Beach case, but it has not been released if he's been cleared or not. They've never said one way or the other.
I'm going to say by omission, probably not.
Yeah. But also there is part of me that's like, I think there's a certain amount of people who commit murders. Like if you've already committed a murder and then you're so adamantly like, but I didn't do that one. Mm-hmm. Like there might be some truth to, you know what I mean? Like, but can you really trust a murderer? No. I guess. I don't know. The fact that he was just like the fact that he sued for defamation was like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also because these people are going to make a profit off of, you know, a false story, allegedly.
True. The second suspect is Christopher Wilder, who has mainly been considered due to his other crimes. So Wilder was convicted of gang rape on a beach in Sydney. Excessive.
I don't want to go to Australia. Ever.
I know. Dingoes, murder.
Beaches.
The
whole place is a beach.
Yeah. So this might be one that we talk about later because he actually moved to the United States. Where he
so many beaches to murder on.
Where he murdered 8 people and became known as the Beauty Queen Killer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Eventually, he actually died in a struggle with police. So that's kind of, again, this is like a very loose connection. The third, and probably what seems like the most likely to me, was Derek Percy, who really didn't become known to the public as a suspect until like the late 90s. Percy was found not guilty by reason of insanity in the abduction and murder of 12-year-old Yvonne Toohey in 1969 and received a sentence of life in custody. Percy was able to be linked to the beach on that day, the day that Marianne and Christine went missing, as well as a cartoon with the word Wanda written on it that was found in his residence in a 2008 raid. There was like another little phrase written on it that had a connection to one of the murders or the murder that he was actually found guilty of. Okay. So this is kind of why they're like, oh, maybe that. But honestly, they don't really have any other solid connections, like anything actually tangential to like connect it. There were hopes that there would be a deathbed confession to not only Marianne and Christine's murders, but any of the 9 missing and murdered children that he is believed to have murdered. He died in 2013 at the age of 64, and he did not confess anything additional on his deathbed. So if he did or knew anything, he has taken it to his grave with him.
And they didn't try to do any DNA evidence off of him?
They may have. I don't know. Oh, wait. Hold on. I'll get to that. It's in my next section. Yeah. So
I was like 2004. Oh, they could definitely do DNA then.
So there was some hope. Oh, you're going to get real mad about this.
Oh, no.
There was some hope of getting
throw it away.
Some sort of lead in 2012 when police announced they believe advances in DNA could help them move the case forward. When evidence was collected at the time of the murders in 1965, one of the things that they had was a blood stain on the jeans of one of the girls. So authorities tested the blood stain, saying that they had gotten a weak identity clue. This is 2012, remember? A weak identity clue indicating it belonged to a male, but they couldn't really determine anything else from the sample. At the time, they were pretty confident that the tech would advance enough to give more information in the future. And sitting here in the future, we know that was true. Yeah. That was accurate though, because even from 2012 to now, which is not a long time.
No.
When we're talking like medical advances, like DNA technology and being able to use it to identify these kind of suspects.
You can really do lots of familial stuff, which wasn't really available at the time.
Exactly. So they were correct in like hoping for that, and here we are. However, 2 years later, in 2014, when the time came to test DNA evidence once again, police announced that some of it had gone missing.
Yeah, typical. Fucking typical.
According to the Sydney Morning Herald, the semen sample that had been pulled from Marianne and Christine's bodies, quote, was listed as an exhibit despite exhaustive searches of the Glebe Forensic Laboratories where it was housed, it had not been located, end quote. They were quick to point out that further testing of the girls' clothes was ongoing. And that they had found trace DNA on Christine's shorts, but it was too old and degraded to pull any useful information. But a semen sample seems like it could have been really helpful. Like probably the most important piece of DNA, I would say.
Yep. I was wondering where that went, because my thought initially was like they got rid of it. You know, with all sexual assault kind of cases, most of the time. The semen samples but blood stays, right? They keep the blood, but not the semen.
Yeah. And I realize there is definitely like a threshold where evidence does get lost, moved, destroyed, whatever, especially when you're talking about cases from that long ago in the 1950s. Like, and without them understanding what modern day people are going to need in order to solve cold cases, right? So I get that to an extent, but like, I also feel like you would look at a case like this and be like, the semen sample is really fucking important. Maybe we should take extra care, like mark it with extra. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's not like the TV show Cold Case where it's like they crack it because someone eventually confesses.
Yeah.
It's like, no. It's science that does it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the case remains unsolved. But that is the story of the Wanda Beach murders. You want to go to the beach now?
Definitely not in fucking Australia. Yeah, so like, I don't like beach vacations, in case you didn't know.
No?
Unless it's like a New England, like chilly October beach vacation.
Is there a
Spooky.
reason specifically, or is it just like
hate
not
the
your
sun.
vibe? Okay, so it's not your vibe.
It's not my vibe.
Really.
I mean, I like a beach. I just don't like the sun.
I
like the ocean, but I don't like to swim in it. You know what I mean?
I will get down on some sun for sure. I will sacrifice being in the sun if I can like be in, on, and around the water. Like I just love being near the big bodies of water.
Yeah, I don't like to
love
swim in it, but I like to,
I'll swim in it.
Put my feet in it, and that's about it.
I'll swim in it.
I've
straight
seen
up.
way too many videos of sharks getting closer and closer to the coastline. I'm good.
Yeah. See, that's why, internal lakes where we're at in the Midwest.
As we always say,
Perfect.
stick to the rivers and the streams that you're used to.
Exactly.
Right?
Good advice.
Thank you. Although there's, a whole host of parasitic things in riverways.
We don't talk about those.
But it's fine. We don't need to talk about that.
Don't look that direction.
Leeches, what are those? No. So we're going to stay on that side of the world.
Okay.
Relatively close to Australia, Thailand.
Ooh.
So
Thailand can be so controversial.
I don't think have we ever been to
I don't
Thailand
think
before?
so.
And okay,
I don't think
thought
so.
So we're going to the island of, and I hope I don't butcher this because I don't speak Thai.
No,
Koh
really?
Tao.
Okay.
It's located in southern Thailand. It is the smallest island off the main island of Thailand, and it's like a vacation within a vacation within a vacation.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will go to Thailand, and then they'll want to do like excursion stuff. And Koh Tao is more of an excursion thing, right? Like think about going to Hawaii, and there's all the little islands you can kind of go from there. So
Gotcha.
that sort of situation.
Okay.
This particular destination is more of a nature-based kind of vacation experience where people are doing a lot more diving and backpacking and hiking.
Is it like jungly over there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very much a small resort town. There's 100 resorts on the island, and like that's it. There's not really anybody who's like living there.
Is it a big island?
No.
Or is it? And they have 100 resorts?
Yes. And when I say resort, we're not talking like big resorts. We're
not like
talking
Sandals?
No.
Okay. Okay.
We're talking smaller than sand.
I'm imagining 100 sandals on a tiny island.
No. And most of the people who work in this particular area are not from Thailand at all. So people will come over here, do a lot of work during the, peak season and leave because it's not a place where people really live.
Gotcha.
So the victims of this case are going to be Hannah Witheridge, who was a 23-year-old from Hemsby, England, and David Miller, who was a 24-year-old from the island of Jersey. And I really want to go to the island of Jersey.
You want to see where all the riches are hiding their money?
I mean, I don't know if that's Jersey necessarily, but is it Jersey? Okay.
It is.
I have this thing where I really want to go to Jersey and Guernsey, like those two islands. I could see that.
Yeah, Jersey, which one was it? It was one of the big leaks.
A WikiLeak?
Yeah.
A WikiLeak-esque? Oh, was it WikiLeaks?
Yeah, it was one of the it was one of the WikiLeaks that was like one of something papers. It was like Pentagon Papers is all that's coming to mind, and I know that's not right.
I know
that's Watergate, but Panama Papers.
There you go.
I think
yes, we've talked about that.
Yeah, Jersey was like where everybody is hiding their offshore bank accounts and all that shit. Yeah,
yeah, they're really beautiful. It's like being in the Mediterranean, but you're in England.
Ooh. Sounds nice.
Yeah,
I see why they hide their money there.
That's my 40-year-old birthday goal is to go over.
Yes,
we'll
girl.
see if that happens, but
you'll get there. It's not. Never mind.
I'll make it happen.
I was about to say it's not that far away, but then I was like,
but it's actually far more expensive than going to England.
Yeah,
because you have to take a ferry or a private plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ferry's cheaper.
I would take the ferry.
Yeah,
just for
it
the
takes
experience.
a long time, though. It's like 8 to 10 hours.
Whatever.
We'll
just hang out on a boat.
We'll plan it. I'm only 35, so it's fine. I have 5 more years.
Yeah.
All right. So both were students, and they were backpacking in Thailand, but not together. They were on separate trips with separate people.
Okay.
Witheridge had just finished their undergraduate studies in education at the University of East Anglia and started doing postgraduate work in speech and language therapy at the University of Essex. So this was like a, fun vacation before I go back to school to do more work.
Yeah.
David Miller had just completed his undergraduate studies in civil and structural engineering at the University of Leeds and was starting on his master's degree journey. So they were both, this was a big thing, when you're in college is to do like especially in England, to do like a backpacking trip after you graduate.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's very common.
And they're also close to a lot of places that I should say closer than we are in the US to all of these like European countries and Eastern countries that like we just don't have easier access to.
Yeah. So they were kind of just doing their thing. David Miller was traveling all over Southeast Asia with his friends. He did a 6-week work placement in Australia with a mining company and then was doing like this little vacation.
Okay.
In August of 2014, both of them arrived in Thailand for their backpacking vacation with their separate friend groups. And the two of them actually met on the island and kind of hit it off a little bit. So like, summer island romance.
Okay, yeah. Summer loving happens so fast.
Right. And then you're dead.
Oh, God.
Oh, sorry. That's not how the song goes.
Oh, no. Grease rated R.
Right.
God.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine Grease as a horror movie?
Honestly, I would watch the shit out of that. I would watch the shit out of that.
Yeah. So, Koh Tao has a really bad reputation. Earlier that year in April, a Belgian tourist named Elise Delamangi, I believe is how you say it, was found dead on the island days after she had been reported missing from her hotel.
Ooh.
She was found on the beach. Cover your ears if you don't want to hear this. She was half eaten by lizards.
Ooh, God.
Yeah. So she had been there for a while.
Yeah.
And the authorities reported it as a suicide. But I don't know how
lizard?
I don't know how they came to that conclusion because most of her body was gone. There was a lot of word that the authorities just tried to like quickly cover it up because they didn't want to have, a bad reputation, even though they already did, and said that it was a suicide and they just found her on the beach.
Especially when you're talking about like a tourist town. It's
yes. Her mother has done several interviews and talked about how her daughter did not commit suicide.
Yeah.
And that issue is still kind of ever present. They closed the case and won't reopen it, but her mother fully believes that she was killed.
Yo.
Now, Hannah and her friends and David and his friends went to this club on the island called the AC Bar to hang out.
Okay.
It was a classic nightclub on the beach, and I looked it up on Yelp.
Okay. Good reviews, bad reviews?
What it's about. It is surprisingly still considered a top 10 bar on the island.
Really?
Despite there being murders right off the beach in front of it on more than one occasion.
How many bars are on the island?
A lot.
Oh, okay. I was like, is there only 10 bars on the island?
No, this is like a discotheque. So it's like a light up dance floor on a beach with a bar. Like it's
like a club.
Cute.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't be like, yeah, let's go, because it's still a little sketchy and dark right off the dance floor. But you know.
Yeah.
So they went there, they were dancing. David met Hannah and they were kind of like, schmoozing each other.
Okay.
It was reported around 1 a.m. that the two left with each other, and only a few hours later at 4 a.m. their bodies were found.
Oh.
Tight timeline.
Wait, say it again? It was...
They left with each other at 1 a.m. and
1
their
to
bodies
4?
were found at 4 a.m.
Okay. Yeah, that's not very long.
Yes. So Hannah was found on the beach, and David was actually found in the shallows of the water off the shore, not very far from her. Both had their clothes removed to varying degrees.
Okay.
They were found meters away from the beach to the resort where they were staying.
Okay.
So the bar was not attached to the resort they were staying at. It was right next door.
Okay.
So they were walking from that beach bar
just like
up
along
the beach to their resort,
okay.
which is a very common thing. Like when we went to the DR for my brother's wedding, there was a great little bar next door at the other resort, so we did that. And then on our way back, we got hit up by several people asking if we wanted to buy drugs. And we're like, no, thank you.
Yeah, I hear that's pretty common.
Yeah, I'm like, nope, don't do those. Bye.
Yeah.
I'm trying to enjoy this moonlit stroll by the water, so fuck off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they were found really close to where they were trying to go.
Okay.
Around them, which is like, this seems like the most absurd scene. So, okay, picture this. Beautiful beach. Tide slowly starting to rise up. Some palm trees.
Yeah.
2 dead bodies.
Okay.
And then we have a hoe,
Okay.
a wooden club, 3 cigarette butts, and a condom just scattered between them.
Okay.
So a lot of stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, because it was on the beach and it was like the early morning, the tide was beginning to rise really quickly now at 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So authorities moved the bodies.
Okay.
And so essentially a lot of the evidence that they should have saved was getting swept away to sea. Kind of similar to the situation we had with yours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think, like in mine, like the tide wasn't coming up that quickly because it was like the next morning. This was, whereas overnight, like obviously the tides are coming in a lot quicker.
And with the wind changing.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like split on this because I understand, especially the bodies themselves. Like I understand the need to move the bodies, but like then you almost need to be faster on your evidence collection. Like
exactly. And you're on an island with a very small police force. So like you're not going to be that fast. Unfortunately.
Right.
The bodies of Hannah and David were then taken to the medical examiner, and it was determined that they both died of blunt force trauma.
Okay.
Hannah also appeared to have been raped and probably beaten more because she had tons of bruising all over her. She had tearing of her skin and internally, and then bite marks all over her upper torso.
Okay.
DNA samples were taken off of her as well. David just had the blunt force trauma, a little bit of bruising, and not much else.
Okay.
Now, right off the bat, the police were trying to investigate this really quickly and quietly. And because this was a resort island and these were tourists, they were trying to figure out who did it right away.
Yeah.
The police were immediately throwing around really wild accusations at other people traveling with the pair, but all of the travel companions were at the bar still when the bodies were found. So they were trying to be like, it was one of you guys in the group. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? We were at the bar the whole time. The other bizarre thing...
this is so frustrating. Okay.
This is going to get so much more frustrating. The other bizarre thing that they did was they started focusing on foreign workers who were coming to the island to work the resorts.
That sounds racist.
So passing the buck on the immigrants.
Ooh.
They brought in 200 individuals to do DNA testing, most of which were migrant workers working the resorts.
Okay.
Now,
Yikes.
the other interesting thing about this location is there's a ton of CCTVs on this island, like a shocking amount of CCTVs.
Yeah.
Which one wouldn't think there would be because it's a remote Thai island, but because there are so many foreigners, it kind of calls for it.
Sure.
So in the CCTV footage that they pulled around the area, they saw 3 men riding motorbikes from a market to the beach where the bodies were found.
Okay.
Upon interviews, they realized that the trio had bought cigarettes and beer, which they had found cigarettes at the scene. So they were kind of stretching a little bit. But like, maybe. The 3 men were Burmese nationals staying on the island to work. They brought in the trio to interrogate, and the 3 men were, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher all of these names, Mao Mao, Za Lin, and Wei Fiao. When questioned, it was discovered that Mao Mao split off from the group of men before getting to the beach. So Za Lin and Wei Fiao were the only 2 that actually physically arrived at the beach.
Okay.
The 3 were brought in on October 2nd for additional questioning. Wei Fiao actually had left the island the following morning after the murder and had to be brought back by Thai authorities.
Okay. Like left... Do
Like
they think,
left
like
for
fled?
work.
Oh, no.
So
okay.
with it might have been a coincidence and it might have been on purpose. We don't really know for sure. But he had left the island to go work somewhere else.
Okay. Okay.
Za Lin admitted in his initial questioning that he came into the country illegally, and this gave the police leeway to seize all of his property. They kind of tricked the men because in their hour-long interrogation, it was alleged that the pair admitted to all their crimes. However, there is some speculations that they didn't admit to it because the Thai police brought in Burmese nationals off the street to interpret for them because none of the Thai officials spoke Burmese.
Yo.
So I have a feeling, and so does a lot of the press, that the translation was not adding up and there was a misunderstanding happening.
I'm kind of, even for like a small police department, I'm kind of surprised with the amount of Burmese migrants that they have working on the island that they wouldn't have a Burmese translator. You know what I mean? Like that seems like it wouldn't be a waste of resources. Like that seems like it'd be a necessary.
It's kind of the way that we treat migrant workers in other areas, like the United States maybe a couple of decades ago.
Yeah.
Where like police didn't bring in translators that spoke Spanish when they were booking people.
Yeah, true.
They do that now.
Yeah.
But back then, no.
Yeah. And they do that now because people complained and had to get laws passed. And
but this is Thailand.
Right.
They still have a king.
Exactly.
So and there's also a lot of racism against other Southeast Asian peoples within Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So I'm not too surprised.
Yeah.
But I do have a feeling that there was some things lost in translation.
Yeah.
It's hard to say exactly what was said. So shortly after their quote-unquote confessions, they were brought before a judge pretty quickly. They were then asked to act out the murders in front of a court and the media.
Oh.
Yeah. So this cemented them as guilty because they were in the courtroom with the objects that were picked up from the island, you know, that wood thing, the hoe, saying this is how it was done.
So
very soap opera-y.
Were they acting out from like what they had put in their quote unquote confessions?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
they
had to be kind of led a little bit in the courtroom on what happened next, which should be an indicator that they didn't do it.
Was given scripts and had rehearsal.
Yeah, right?
Jesus.
We need rehearsal time for this. So several of the Burmese nationals that were interrogated that had their DNA taken initially, a lot of them went to the media after these two were brought before a judge, and they stated that when they were in custody just to get DNA tests, they were treated really poorly. Some of them were even assaulted. One person stated that they were burned with scalding hot water just coming in to give a DNA test. So there's a lot of conflict starting to arise, a lot of things happening where all of these Burmese nationals are saying, like, the police all treated us all like criminals before we were, you know, even attempting to assist by giving our DNA.
Yeah.
Allegedly, the DNA evidence that they took from the pair that were brought in matched, but there was a lot of mishandling of things, so it's hard to say if it was accurate because the DNA was gone.
Oh, my goodness.
Their DNA was gone.
Oh, goodness.
There was also a false report that the victims' phones were found in the perpetrators' homes. So there was a lot of like misinformation going around. Things were getting lost. The DNA evidence was really sketchy. It was
so like the DNA was gone because they had used it all?
Yes.
That they said?
Yeah, and they're like, oh, we can't retest. Like, you know, that kind of a thing. It just seemed really sketchy.
So you can't double check to like, got it.
Even though technically you take another sample, but it's like...
They don't know. They don't have any more DNA left.
No. DNA is gone. Once it's used, it's gone forever.
One and done.
So a lawyer then showed up from Myanmar, and the duo then were able to kind of get their shit together and retracted their statements and stated that they had been confessed under pressure and they had been assaulted while they were in police custody. They stated that they had been beaten in interrogation, stripped naked, and left in a freezing cold room.
Oh gosh. That's extreme.
So extreme that the Thailand National Human Rights Commission attempted to investigate the allegations.
Oh my gosh.
But the police refused to comply with them and did not go to any of the meetings that they requested.
Are we surprised? Is anybody surprised by this shit anymore?
No. Now, the Thai government had 20 lawyers, which is excessive and over the top. And they were really only allowed to meet with the defendant. Their own lawyers were only allowed to meet with them for like an hour or so.
So the Thai government, as in that is trying the prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They had 20 people working in and out of them. The actual Burmese men had a few lawyers as well. So there was like a lot of lawyers in this case, like an excessive
Very
amount.
lawyery.
They initially were only allowed to meet with their clients for about an hour or so there wasn't a lot of preparation that was able to be done.
Yeah.
They retracted their statements, and then the prosecution presented a 900-page police report, which is like, you can't read that within a few days. They brought forward forensic evidence and the confessions. The trial lasted 18 days.
So wait, they got it in a couple of days before the trial started? They got the police report? Oh my goodness.
900 pages.
Yeah, that's...
900 pages. What? The trial
guys.
lasted 18 days, with most of the days being 10-hour days in the courtroom, which is like so long.
That's a long day.
That's like too long.
Yeah.
Now, the defense claimed that the investigation was flawed due to the mishandling of the forensics, lack of legal representation during interrogation, use of threats and intimidation to secure a confession, and intimidation of the witnesses. On July 10th, the court ordered the DNA to be retested.
Okay.
Police revealed that the samples from Witheridge's body were used up, but were able to provide DNA samples from the murder weapons that were found around them. The head of the county's Institute of Forensic Science found that the DNA on the hoe did not match the defendants.
Okay.
An Australian forensic scientist brought in by the defense claimed that the timeline of DNA extraction was dubious at best.
Sure.
A rapid analysis of the DNA samples had happened in less than 12 hours, which she said was unusual because, quote, extracting DNA from mixed samples was difficult and extremely time-consuming, end quote.
Yeah.
So the forensic scientists were ultimately not allowed to kind of, you know, raise these issues too much. So they were like starting to talk and they're like, yeah, no, that's good. Okay, we don't have any questions for you. You know, like trying to
this is
diminish the findings, basically.
This is why when they're testing DNA, it can take like weeks to get back sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
so that's why they were saying like, this doesn't really make
that's crazy.
sense. So unfortunately, On December 24th, 2015, Zha Lin and Wei Fiao were found guilty of murdering Witheridge and Miller by 3 judges and were sentenced to death.
Wow.
Even though there was all of these things saying, I don't think so.
Right.
Now, the defense appealed several times, even taking it all the way to the Thai Supreme Court, which I didn't know existed. And this was in 2019 that they took it to the Thai Supreme Court.
Okay.
So pretty recently. So 2015 to 2019.
Wow.
In a strange fucking twist, the king of Thailand, Vajiralongkorn, I phonetically spelled that so that I could say it right.
I do that too.
He actually commuted the 2 sentences in August of 2022.
Oh.
So the men were released from jail.
Okay.
So like a presidential pardon of sorts.
Right.
The case is still considered really botched and open. It also affected tourism on the island for a while. And unfortunately, there have been 4 official murders of tourists since 2014 and several disappearances and even stranger quote-unquote natural deaths that have happened on the island.
Oh my God.
To the degree that they're saying that there might be someone on Koh Tao that is a serial killer.
No shit. Maybe if, oh my God. Okay, so
that's the Koh Tao murders.
Here's the deal. When you have these places that rely on a tourist industry, which I am not necessarily saying there is something wrong with that, but generally speaking, there is an inability by the government or the government representatives to acknowledge that the problem is internal. Like, a lot of times it's because they don't, like you said, don't want their image to be damaged by being like, the people of this place are what's causing the problems. That's why they're so eager to point the finger at the tourists or at the migrants or literally anyone else other than a Thai person.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, who's to say it's not a migrant murder? But I mean, you're not doing your due diligence.
No, not by any means. And the fact that they want to investigate it quickly, get it closed, not make it a national sensation to where it affects the tourist industry will in fact affect the investigation that they ultimately do.
Yeah.
That's
it. While I was reading about this and writing it, all this stuff in the news started coming up about the potential for a serial killer in Chicago happening with all of the bodies of these young men being found in the fucking lake.
Yeah.
But it just kept making me think about that and all the parallels between like the fact that people don't want to admit when there's a fucking serial killer or like someone going to town murdering people.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Because really
stupid reasons, right?
Really, by not doing due diligence and not having a thorough enough investigation to actually catch the person who is doing this, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 or whoever, like the potential for them to continue reoffending if they are not caught is very high.
Oh yeah, because you're like, it's too easy.
Right. So you're really making the problem worse.
Yep.
By just letting people.
You are the problem.
You are the problem. It's me. Anyway, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So what did we learn today? Don't go to the beach.
Don't go to the beach. Before you go to the beach, maybe check out this podcast.
Stop yourself, turn around, go back home and just listen to podcasts.
It's God's litter box.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're the Vocal Fries. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Megan.
And we have a podcast about linguistic discrimination.
We talk about language, not being a jerk, not judging people for the way that they speak, and we try to have a good time.
We talk about things like vocal fry, swearing, Southern American English, and prescriptive grammar.
You can find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app.
Well, that has been our episode. Janelle, any final thoughts?
I mean, no, I'm just reaffirmed that going to the beach for me is a no.
Yeah, right. All right. I think that's all we got then.
That's a podcast.
That's the podcast. Our sound and editing is by Tiff Fullman. Our music is by Jason Zakshevsky, the Enigma. This has been the Bad Taste Crime Podcast. We will see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway. It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.